Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And today we have a very courageous woman who I do know a little bit about because she happens to be married to my brother. But in her own right, she has got some incredibly courageous stories that I know of. So we might actually find out some more that I don't know today. And it is the very talented Nicole Payne, who is a real estate advocate. And if you don't know what that is, just stick around and you'll find out. It's pretty cool. Anyway, Nicole, before we learn a bit more about you and what you do, could you just share what excites you about having this conversation with me today about courage?
Well, Kim, like I said to you, I've got a little bit of a girl fan on you, and you just happen to be my sister-in-law. So I am lucky, because I get to have you on every second weekend and at family events. So, other people need to pay for you to stand up in front of them. I get to chat to you while we're having a wine and having a family discussion and a play out in the backyard or a swim or whatever we do. So listening to your podcast, I really think that initially I thought, what is courage and how does that play out? And, what kind of courage do I have? And, I've heard you talk about it and I've heard your guests talk about it. And I thought all these wonderful women that you've had chat to you, I could really draw from that. And they're all just normal people. I thought to myself, what could I give that would be insightful? What story could I tell that would be interesting? But I just find that the interesting part is listening to all these lovely different women that have such a different take on life. And I have learned something from every podcast I've listened to with you. So I thought, why not? Let's do that for other people and go through that sort of scary part of putting yourself out there.
Are you scared about doing this?
Not necessarily. I say scared in a way of maybe a little bit nervous and apprehensive. I guess my role as a real estate advocate, like you said before, is to sit in front of people and be a bit of a chameleon, be diverse in the conversation, really involved in what they're going through. And, I don't feel fearful about that, but I think sitting and being really raw and knowing what's coming in this podcast might be a bit different.
I get that all the time. Yeah. People that are like at the top of their game, they're so cool. They'll get on stages like you. They'll make these $1 million deals. And the minute it's like, oh, could you just be on my podcast? It's like, oh no, I don't know about that. Yeah. So on that note, I promise it won't be scary. I can't promise that it won't get real and raw. Tell us a little bit about you and your background. Like, how did you get to where you are today from where it all began, just in a couple of minutes?
Well, I guess starting from the beginning, as most good stories start, I'll start there. I had a pretty normal sort of younger upbringing, I guess. But I guess all of those things in my early life really molded me for the person that I am now and gave me the experiences and the strength and the courage to do the things that I've done throughout my working life. And when I look back, it was a pretty normal growing up. We lived in a commission house. We didn't have a lot of money. My parents worked very hard. But, I look at it, we had roses in the front garden. We had a above ground swimming pool and a trampoline. What could be better? We had a little school that we went to at the back of our house. And, life was good. My mum met my dad when she was 20. There was 15 years difference between the two of them. And my father had been married before and had 2 children. And my brother and I were born, when my mum was 22, she was quite young. You look back, you go, oh my God, just a baby. And there was 14 months difference between my brother and I, and we were close. And, growing up that way in a little neighborhood at the time, we didn't know we didn't have any money. We didn't know that we were, anything other than happy. I think that really came down to it early on when mental health mixed with religion came into play when I was growing up, and my mum became quite passionate about religion, and it went beyond the Sunday school on a Sunday, and went a little bit more into the darker side, or a little bit more in the obsessive side of religion, which was an interesting thing to grow up in that environment. We then, found that we were, quite on our own growing up younger because she was very distracted, and my father, consequently, her broke up because of that. And then we found ourselves, quite on our own, the ages of 13, 14. My mum's mental health came into it with schizophrenia, and, that then meant that my brother and I really needed to look at surviving on our own. My dad wasn't there, and, my brother had to leave school very early to get a job, so I kept going with school, working 3 jobs as a young person, trying to put myself through high school, and us trying to make sure social services didn't take us away, while my mum was very ill in and out of institutions and things like that. So I think the teenage years really made me go, wow, if it's not me, it's not going to happen. If I'm not the one that's going to provide money, clean the house, look after my brother, work 3 jobs, take myself to school, and get myself out of this, it was never going to happen for me. It was a difficult, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it for any reason. It was a difficult growing up, but it also made me so passionate about what I didn't want and so focused on where I was going. And that was anywhere out of where I was, basically.
Wow. I like how you started with, we had a really normal upbringing. And then bam. Oh, wow. There's so many things I'd love to unpack here. What age did you sort of start to feel the impacts of your mum's getting into more religion and the mental health side of it? When did you, as a child, really start to feel that?
I believe it was around the age of 12, 13, that sort of age. My brother was about 14, and it was probably before that, to be honest, Kim, but I didn't quite even notice it until the fact that, I knew that this wasn't normal. So, and then started distancing myself and became, a way to survive was just being independent of that, and seeking some really other people that had some impact in my life. So really great friends, their parents. I would stay a lot at my beautiful friends' houses, and their parents were lovely and normal, and I got a bit of what life could be in the household that I grew up in. So it was quite different.
Oh, completely different, because most kids that have what they'd call a normal childhood, going back to what you first opened with, this is not how a normal childhood usually pans out. So
No.
yeah, but I love that in saying that, and I can only imagine the sort of challenges and difficulty you would have faced as a kid. But what came out of that was the independence and okay, if no one else is going to be there to look after me, then I'm going to do it. And you just took that on. Why do you think you did that? Because it would have been very easy to have gone the other way and potentially then ended up in some sort of foster system or what have you. What do you think stopped you from doing that, and that tenacity to just get up and look after yourself?
I think the drive for that came more out of fear. And we talk about courage, but I think courage and fear go hand in hand, don't they? So we were fearful. We were fearful, we would have to drive the car. I mean, we didn't have licenses. We had a car there. We would put a disguise on and then we would drive the car to go to the supermarket. We would drive the car, which, I mean, wasn't even 14 then. We would drive the car down to see my mum in Bendigo when she was in institution. So we would basically get around town, but in fear that someone was going to pull us over, that we were going to be found out that we were kids and that we were living in this house trying to pay rent while we were going to school with no adult supervision. So, and then when mum did come back for the breaks that she did come back, and she was so ill, she would go off medication and get picked up by the police, and it was a different world. It was my brother and I, and it was, us against them, and we tried our very best because there's things that we wanted. My brother, all he wanted was a family of his own. He wanted to get married, get out of there, start his new life, leave it all behind him. So he worked full time, and he worked 2 jobs for us to be able to pay rent and go to school. And he wanted me to stay and go to school, which was the decision that we made. So I went all the way through to year 12. But while working and doing all the things you need to do. And my grandma was an amazing support too at the time. So I remember she was always there for us. She was a little bit older. She lived in Richmond. So when I went to study, she was there, and she's always been a really great calming influence on our lives. But yeah, so I think, to answer your question, I hope, is that, the fear of us, being found out was something that really resonated with me. So I guess I sometimes still feel the difference between courage and fear. And I've always tried to make the decisions in life that are never fear-based, because that's something that I find is definitely going to get you in trouble. When you make a decision that feels right with your inner compass, your heart and your head, and everything is in line, then you know you're headed in the right direction. When you're purely worrying about the outcome, it's not the right choice, because obviously that's fear, isn't it?
Oh, it is. But, Nick, so many people can't tell the difference. And fear ends up being a stronger voice. And even though they might want to go in and try and find the courage or do something or make the changes, fear just overrides and drowns out any courage. So to think that you were a young girl, still growing up, still navigating life, and put in that situation, and instead of letting fear take over, I love though that one of your biggest fears was that you would get caught underage driving. I mean, forget about, eating and having a roof over your head and finishing school. I love that was a fear. But that is real. I mean, this is courage at another level. And to think that you've gone through all those years when most others are supported by parents or family members, you did all of that on your own. So how does that translate into, so yes, you had to look after yourselves, you and your brother. And yes, there was some support, and the biggest fear was that you didn't end up being taken away and put somewhere else. How did you then, one, find the ability to focus and finish school, and two, then go on and study and get a job? And I know how successful you were. How did you make all that happen? And why did you choose the career you chose?
I started out sort of looking at what I wanted to do. I did a bit of retail, and I did a lot of work, a lot of different jobs, but I did a bit of retail and I liked that. So I decided that fashion was the thing that I wanted to focus on. So I went and did, it was difficult to get through high school given the current conditions that I lived in, to be honest. So I barely made it through. Honestly, I barely made it through. And not to mention, got way too interested in boys at the time. But so if I had my time over, I probably would have focused less on that. But I got through high school with not the best scores. I think I would have also focused more on education, and I hope that comes through with my son at a later time, which I know it's so important now. So from that stage, I did a bit of a retail, fashion, merchandise, marketing, design. I managed to get some land, talk my way through some really big jobs, fake my way through. I managed to land a gig for Q Design. So I did this course and again, barely made it through that. Q Design, and I was the youngest area manager. So I opened up Daimaru, Burke Street, did that for Q. And I don't know if you know Q Ladies Fashion now. They're a bit different than what they were.
One of my favourite brands.
Yeah, that was a really big role. That was 45 bitchy women, and me as a young sprout coming in trying to tell them what to do. And I also went with Sports Girl. I worked with Sports Girl for a while, and I opened up their clearance and warehouse stores. So I was always manager and went through that, fashion and retail sort of space. And when I was 21, I bought my first house. I saved my butt off, and it was $7,000 and for deposit and $69,000 to buy the house, and it was in Upwey, and I'll never forget it. This old circa 1800s, sort of early 1800s home was so beautiful, but it needed a bit of work. And I was with a guy at the time, which was my first husband, and we weren't married just then, but we were dating, and we had been for a while, and we lived in his parents' home to save the money for it, and we got this first house. Anyway, I was still working, getting the train into the city with Q and working, in that space. I bought the house. I loved it. I loved real estate. We renovated. He was a builder, and from then we bought another property. So I had my second property when I was 22 or just turned 22. So at that time I was hooked. So I thought I better do the real estate course so I know what I'm doing. And so I did that and I loved it. So real estate was, I think, a real way for me to do something I loved and also to do something that I was naturally good at. And it was because I loved houses, yes, but it was more so my joint love for sales, and then also too, property as well that really got me really involved in real estate.
Oh, okay. Oh, I've got 100 questions here. Okay. Firstly, why did you at 19 buy a house, especially given what you've just told us that you literally, your brother and you independently put yourself through your teenage years and everything. Why at 19 did you want to buy a house? Because most other 19-year-olds are wanting to travel or go to the pub.
Yeah, because I'd grown up so quickly, I'd done all that. I'd gone out with fake IDs when you could get them really easily. I had no parents telling me that I had to be home at a certain time. I could basically do what I want when I wanted. I'd worked, I'd done everything I'd ever done at probably much too younger age. I'd travelled around Australia, I'd backpacked, I'd found myself in precarious situations. I'd done, you name it, I'd done it. So by that stage, I felt like I was 100 years old, not 19. And so just based on life experiences, and then I just knew that I didn't want to be poor. We were poor. I didn't want to be poor. I knew that
When did you realize you were poor? Because you were saying at the very
early on.
beginning,
I didn't. Yeah, we
no.
didn't think that we were
When
any
did that
different from
change?
anyone else. I think really my mum made our clothes. We didn't have a lot. We had a caravan, we had above ground pool, we had a trampoline. I never thought I was poor, but it was a commission home, and my parents saved a lot, and eventually they did move out of that home to buy their own, and they worked very hard, when they in that early stages of life. So I guess when looking back, when I was older, I realized that we didn't have much money. And then obviously when mum was on her own, and I knew the value of money, and I knew how hard it was to get, and I knew how hard it was to keep, and what things cost. I was grocery shopping and cooking for a family, and, you know,
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Which makes sense why at 19 you've lived so much life. You've now understood what being poor is, and you don't want that for you.
yeah.
So you go and buy your first house. Then you buy your second house. What was it about property then that you fell in love with? Why property? Because there's obviously other things that you can do for financial stability. Why property?
I found myself, really wondering what I would be good at, what I would really love to do. And I think when it came down to real estate, and maybe looking back, it was the fact that we didn't have our own houses growing up. Maybe it was a bit of that. Maybe that my life and my family and I was so in turmoil that maybe it was so important that house, family, that sort of stuff came into my job. But I can tell you what it actually was, the pivotal time that it actually was for me. I did my real estate course. I started a new job. I opened up the yellow pages. I circled 9 real estate agents locally to me, and I ended up with, 4 interviews. And by the next day, I had a job. So basically, that's how it worked. And so I got a job with LJ Hooker, which was a small office in Ferntree Gully. And their idea of professionalism was, their sales meeting was at the pokies, so they could have a flutter after. Like, it was just so not professional at all. And they really didn't know what they were doing, to be honest. So I walked in there going, geez, this can't be what real estate's like. I really thought that it would be something different. And so then I stayed with them for a few months and did quite well. But then I got poached. So I got a tap on the shoulder that said, hey, we've been watching your success. You've just started with these guys, come across. I didn't know anything about Roval. I didn't even know where Roval was, but Barry Plant in Roval were an amazing group, and they were the top real estate office within the franchise group, and the operators there were very, very good. So I went there for the interview and I was hired. I stayed there for 12 years at Barry Plant in Roval, and I have to say that the first year that I got Rising Star, when it was my first year in real estate with all of the network, and I stood up there on that stage with thousands of people in the room, told that I was brilliant, wonderful, valued, and good enough, was the moment that I went, this is for me.
How old were you?
Oh, so 23?
Oh, fruit. Why were you so good at it? Why did
Um,
you get Rising Star? You're only 23, and I know by now you're really 100 years old in terms of life experience, but 23?
Yeah, well, I remember cutting a little clip out of the paper, which was me on the event where they'd put an ad in for the paper. And I started this little book of all these things that I did, in real estate. And there I am with my hair all up in a bun and flowers poked in there and, wearing my Doc Martens, on stage at a real estate event. And they gave me the certificate or the award, and I just was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is me. This is what I want to do. And not only that, but I really felt like a part of a family there. They were a family. It was a male dominated industry. Don't get me wrong, real estate is a hard slog to work through. And when you're young, and someone even told me in my early stages, being too pretty can have a negative effect on your real estate career, Nicole. Anyway, so not that I'm saying that I'm really super duper hot or anything, but I'm just saying that,
You
that
are?
was a male. Thank you that you always say that because you're my sister and I love you. But that was a male thing in real estate. They just so archaic in their ideas. But I really felt like I belonged in this family. And not only that, I was getting validation. So over my time there, I became top female real estate agent for the network, the top 1% for real estate agents in Victoria. I won 47 awards in real estate, ranging from $1 Million Club, top income earner, top lister, top sales. I managed to achieve everything that I desired in my time there. But don't get me wrong, I worked. I really worked. I was obsessive worker, but I loved it. It achieved me the financial freedom that I always wanted. I started building wealth and bought more property and more property and more property. So I was creating the financial freedom, but to the detriment of a lot of things, I think, looking back. Some wild, crazy young girl like I was with no regard for myself and caring for myself, but being tough and knowing that I had to toughen my way through it. I think looking back, I wasn't really that kind to myself during those years. And I was up there all dewy faced and smiley up on stage getting piles and piles of awards with a target on my back and everyone after the top dog position. And a real estate mentality is you hunt as a pack and you eat alone. So that was kind of the way I rolled.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So you've got the success, you've got the validation, you've got the financial stability, you've got a place where you belong, a family, all in real estate, which, as you said, is an industry that they're not the words that you normally associate with real estate. You do normally think cutthroat, yeah, dog eat dog kind of environment. You found all of this in there. How, though, did you feel as you started, like by the time you got to the 47th, 48th award or whatever, and you've noticed that you're not necessarily looking after you? How did that come out? How did that play out? Or why did you get out of it? What stopped? What changed?
I think it was, and mind you, I was young, and we referred to before about the man that I got the first house with, who was a builder. Well, I actually married that man. Like, he was my first husband. Your brother is my second. So the first one I married. Now, when I met him, he was creative, poetic, tanned, tattooed, very spunky, but also too was just amazing. Creative and I'm artistic, so I'm creative too. I'm this kind of weird conundrum of real estate brain sort of person, business person, to being a 2 a.m. painter, I call myself, because that was my way to paint and de-stress and to leave that crazy work behind me while I'm trying to tap into this greater need for finding the creativity and the love inside myself, which was a release for painting for me. I've always been artistic in that way. So he was very creative as well. So I was drawn to that. Now, a very courageous, we're talking courage, time in my life was when he also suffered from bipolar. So I've had a lot of mental illness over my time with people I love. So he came to me and said, "You're never around, it's the job or it's me." And I said, "I'll take the job." So when I chose my real estate career over my first husband, and consequently too, he had his own demons to deal with, but that's the decision that I made. I think that was a courageous one to get out of that situation, but to actually say, this means so much to me that I am going to move forward with my dreams.
Wow. So you've chosen your dreams over your marriage, and for whatever reason, and obviously they were the right reasons for you, but to have the courage to do that, like, that is just remarkable. You chose you loved you first.
That's right.
Wow. I don't know, how did that end? How did that one end? Was that a bit ugly, or was it a parting of, okay, sure?
Yeah, look, I think there's one thing I've learned over the years, and that is you can have as much money as you think you need in life, but there's no guarantee what the future is going to look like, and that is a marriage breakup with splitting up of funds. And then another long-term relationship in my life where broke up, splitting up of funds, and so you can sort of find yourself getting back to the place where you were very, very quickly based around those decisions. But I think the courageous ones that I've had moving forward has always propelled me forward, whether or not it's that one or it's the decision, in talking relationships. My goodness, I am getting deep with you, sister. So the second long-term relationship, he didn't want children, and I was at an age where I really did want children. So as I worked a long time through that sort of time when I was with him as well, and he was great support. And again, the relationship was really passionate, and I fall for people, I suppose, that in the past that had been giving me the things that I hadn't necessarily had or allowed myself to have because I'd been so focused on work. So when I was with him, he was really passionate and really deep, and we had this amazing deep connection, and he would help me connect with my spiritual side as I'm working like a demon, and coming back into that. So it was what I needed at the time. He said, "I don't want to have children." I said I did want to have children. It was a very hard decision to make, but I was courageous enough to say, that's it. I know there's something better for me, and includes a lovely man with a family, which is what I have now.
And talk to me, how old were you then when that decision that you either stay with this guy who chooses not to have a family or you move on, how old were you?
I was 35 then. 34.
Oh, okay. So body clock as well, which I hate that. But
I had that too.
Talk to any doctor and they'll shove it right down your throat that at 35 as a woman, you don't have another 30 years to decide if you want to have a family or not. Wow. Oh, Nick. Okay. Oh, fruit. Okay. Firstly, I just want to go back. First husband, you said very creative, very artistic, and that was something you enjoyed. You mentioned that you're a 2 a.m. painter. Okay. Talk to me about that. You're in real estate. Yes, there's creativity because you've got to find solutions for problems that maybe didn't exist. But creativity from an artistic perspective, how did that play out in your life, and how did that complement, or was it a bit of a tussle between that and doing your real estate work?
It was a bit of a tussle between the two. I think what it enabled me to do is to ground myself. I've always thought of myself as being wise and spiritual, not religious. There's a difference. I grew up with that. That's not what I am. I know there's something higher. I feel vibrations. I'm not a hippie at all. But what I'm saying is I think there's real inspiration that comes with being creative, and I have to be creative, whether it's cooking, whether it's art, whether it's doing some sort of art project or doing something around the home. It has to be creativity for me. That's been my outlet, and that's something that is just for me, I guess.
I was going to say, why? Why do you have to be creative? Because I know that's not something everyone would say, but that was your outlet. When did you know that that was your outlet?
In school, I was always really creative and drawn to the arts. And I think that when I started doing, my portfolio for fashion, when I was doing that as well, I really loved that aspect of it, and design and creation. But I really suppose I did a creative writing class when I was younger as well, and I really enjoyed that. And so I think it's just the creativity in general that I need. I need for my soul. I find myself boiling like a kettle, until I finally the whistle goes off and I have to let some steam out. That's me and creativity. It's not elegant the way I put that, but I suppose it's really me. If I get grumpy, I'm a grumpy pants if I don't do something like that, I suppose, to myself. And if it's 2 a.m. at night and that's the only time I get, then I'll take it.
Oh, I must say, yeah, I've heard you being up till all hours painting or cooking. Two things that you'd never get me up at 2 a.m. doing. Oh my goodness. Just going back, and I want to come back to this because it's funny you say about the artwork. We've got quite a bit of artwork in our house by 3 artists. One artist is my youngest son. One artist is my next oldest son, and the other artist is the beautiful Nicole Payne, which is you. They're the only artwork we carry in this house, and they're 3 of the best artists I've ever known.
Thanks.
Going back to you're 35, you're with your second guy, not married. You didn't say you're married, and he's basically said he doesn't want children. You've decided you do want kids. You made the decision to leave him. Tell me what happened from there. Because that's a big call, especially when you're at the age of 35.
Yeah, it is a big call. And, I'm still working, at Barry Plant, and I'm still, I achieved all these great things, and I was, invited often to get up and speak to groups of women and inspire women about real estate and about growth, and started doing some training things through the network as well, and invited to talk to new recruits in the industry. So at this stage I was sort of at the stage where what else is next, what's next for me, and I guess it came quite timely, everything that came after that. And I think the things that came after me saying that I wanted to go a different direction and leaving that relationship were the most exciting parts of my life, I think. So by opening the window and allowing the room for new things to be created and for me to manifest my future, I enabled a whole new life, which is one I've created and one I'm really proud of. So by not being stuck in that and being brave enough to make that choice, I knew what my heart wanted. It was always about having a family of my own. What I didn't know was I was already going through menopause. So I left this man to have my own family. So at that age...
35.
Yeah. So it had just started around that time. So consequently, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, but going through that and then obviously becoming single, I was single and it was fun. I did a lot of fun things. I did. It was great. Each time in between, single has been great, but, going out on dates. And I actually went on, this is how I met your brother, and you know this story. So this is after this relationship, dated a few duds, whatever. And I went on to an RSVP. It was a site back then, and it's still around, but it's not as prevalent with all these other dating apps and things now, my goodness. So I went on RSVP, and I'd always been so, like an interview. All right, you've got 30 seconds of my time. If I don't get the feels, you're out. It was that kind of approach. So I never had days off. I was always working. So I had this one day off, and I thought, right, I'm going to take all of these people I've been chatting to on RSVP. I'm going to line them up with hour intervals and have coffee with them because, I've got to get shit done as well at home. I've got a life to live. Let's try and interview these dudes and see if they're any good. So anyway, I did a couple of these One turned up who said they were about 5 foot, 5.5 foot, and they ended up being like 4.5 foot. It was quite funny. Another one turned up a bit drunk and then asked me for a lift home because he took the bus. Somebody else turned up, and what else? Oh yeah, and there was absolutely nothing. I think I sat down and then I went, you know what? I'm not going to order. I appreciate your time and I value it. I'm off. So, and then I met your brother, and coffee turned into dinner, and then phone calls the next day, and he was the master of the chase, wasn't he? And your brother, in his single years, so he really laid it on, which was great, and consequently I think he snagged the girl, which is really great, and I'm so grateful for. So Clint and I have been married 10 years now. We met pretty early. We moved in pretty early together. We just kind of knew, and like you said, body clock was ticking, and we wanted our own family as well. We got married, a year later after meeting, and it was just, we knew that it was meant to be. And then from there, we started, even before we were married, having our own family. It was only then that we went through IVF and we realized that I was in the 1% club. I mean, I've been in the 1% club before for real estate, and that was really a good thing to be in. But the 1% for fertility means that you've got 1% chance of getting pregnant naturally. I was just like, oh no, this can't have happened. So we went through the whole process, and this took a lot of courage for me. IVF, lots of drugs, embryo donor, egg donor. We did everything, and it was a real chunk of our life. But also too, at the time when we're trying to get pregnant, I'm still working for Barry Plant. We had this discussion, Clint and I. It was about what's going to be right for you, what's going to be right for your body, and it was leaving real estate. And that was really tough because I lost my identity. I lost everything I loved, and I was working so hard on this relentless pursuit to have a baby, which could possibly never have happened. And we just worked through that, I suppose, together.
Wow, so you leave a guy at 35 because he doesn't want to have kids with the hope of meeting someone, falling in love and having a baby, to then meet this someone, attempt to have a baby, and now coming up against a 1% chance of it actually coming true. Wow. Okay. So you talk to me about leaving real estate, then I want to go into the baby stuff. Tell me about leaving real estate. So you chose real estate over the first guy that you were married to. Why this time did you say goodbye to real estate, and how did that feel?
Well, I said goodbye to real estate because I couldn't do the job that I was doing in the way that I was doing it, and focusing on being calm, trying to, we had two miscarriages at that time, and all I could contribute it to was my fast-paced kind of work-life balance. There was none. So I snagged the guy, which is great. Now I've got to keep the man and I've got to try and do this business and try and have a baby. And, the body being a vessel for that was like, I've got to try everything I simply can at this stage. So I said goodbye to real estate and said I'm going to have a break. I actually ended up getting a role that was in corporate real estate. So I wanted to be I got a job with LJ Hooker again, actually, believe it or not, out of a reference, and someone said this amazing girl would be great in your head office. She could do all the onboarding for new recruits in real estate, and onboarding for your new businesses and grow your brand. So I was just about to start that job after Clint and I got married, and I broke my foot in 3 places about 2 weeks before our wedding in Bali. Do you remember that, Kim?
I sure do. Oh man, I sure do.
Oh gosh. So we all went to Bali. I had crutches. Clint walked down the aisle to me holding a bouquet. Your mum and dad are on either side. Johnny's holding my crutches, which is my beautiful, my father-in-law, your stepfather. Holding my crutches while we're getting married. And then it was a matter of go home, have surgery, and then put the moon boot on and then start my new job. That was basically the plan. So I did that. I didn't love it, I must say. I thought they were a bit unorganised, and there was no one there for support. But then soon after, Ray White said, hey, look, Nicole, we know you're in corporate. We'd love to talk to you about becoming corporate. So I went there and started working the same role, business development manager for Victoria. So I looked after the corporate stuff there. So that was my slowing down of my real estate career. It was supposed to be my slowing down.
Yeah, most other people slowing down, especially if they're artistic, would be getting up, sleeping in, then getting up, painting, doing all this. No, no. So the universe is really throwing a lot at you, right? So you've left your love of real estate to have a baby. You've met the guy, but just before the wedding, you break your foot, and really badly. We're not just talking about a broken foot. Like, this was
Yeah.
a serious break with serious surgeries, serious
Yeah.
downtime. And I remember, obviously, being part of the family. And then you take a job in corporate because that's just slowing down.
Yeah.
Um, you're still going through IVF at this point. Tell me what happened with all of that.
So we tried a lot of different avenues. We tried for a few years doing the IVF, and that was pretty relentless. Even a beautiful friend of mine offered her eggs, which didn't work out, obviously, but she went through the process too. We'll never forget that. Also, too, we found a Egg Donor Angel, which is a beautiful site which people donate their eggs, and we did that because obviously I didn't have any. So we're trying to get pregnant in a lot of different ways. We just didn't give up. I just knew it was going to happen. I knew in every fibre of my body that I was going to be a mum. I just knew it. And whatever way that it came, it was going to be amazing. So, and, I don't give up. It's not something that's in my DNA. If I get something in my mind, and I just make it happen. So from Ray White, we're doing all this, and we're merrily going along, and I'm helping bring new business onto the network and helping, was employed to grow the business. A short while in, I say, oh God, I think I want to do the thing that I never said I was going to do, which is open my own office. So I just moved into Beaumaris from Mount Dandenong, and Clint and I just bought a house in a place where I knew no one, had no connections, and didn't have any kind of database to start a new business with or anything. I knew it was going to be mega tough, but I said to Clint, this is what I want to do. I want to open Ray White Beaumaris. And he said, okay, I'll support you, as he always does. So I opened up the office. I moved into the house. 3 months later, I opened up the office. I did the fit out in lightning speed because I'd been practicing with all these other people with their businesses. How hard could it be? So I remember the first day when the office was open, and I turned the sign from closed to open, and then I opened the door, and then I looked down left and right down the street, and I thought, okay, you can all come now. And that was the kind of feeling that I had, that it would be like that. So it was a big learning curve, but still on IVF, doing 2 injections a day while I'm running a business and trying to build a business from zero. So I had lots of support from corporate. Here I am in my moon boots still. So I'm walking the streets, door knocking. Oh, man. And I remember it was so cold one day. I was walking down Beach Road, and the icy wind was beating up against me. I've got a moon boot on. I think it was Saturday, and I'm door knocking to get data. And would you like a report about what's happening in real estate? We've just opened up, and here I am. This is me. And collecting sort of data for a database, which I still use today. And I burst into tears because all I wanted to do was go home and give up. But I didn't. I kept going that day, and I got my first listing that day.
Wow. So you are on IVF doing all the treatment to still try and have a baby. Mm-hmm. You've got a broken foot, and you open a brand new real estate business that you've never done before. Even though you know real estate, you've never run your own business. And you're in a location where you've got no network whatsoever. And it's not even close, right? This is Beaumaris. You've come from the Dandenongs. And Mount Dandenong. But you still never gave up. How many other people by this stage would have absolutely given up or gone, there's got to be a different way to do it? Can I ask, why did you not start your own business before now?
Because all directors and all people that I'd spoken to had said, you can make so much more money, be in charge of your own destiny. You can, really just do what you're great at without all the other stress, Nicole, if you're not a director, right? And so I went, okay, that makes total sense. I got a few salespeople that work for me. I got PA, it's all happening. Got my own little pod, all good. And I did believe them. But then when I started working with other officers, I went, wow, what they're doing is they're building a rent roll. They're building future wealth. They're building a team. They're building a lifestyle. And it's not just where it relies on the one person. If you set the boundaries in place and you have good people under you, and that's all good in theory, but if you create that, then you're on a really good income, good lifestyle, and that's what I wanted. Yeah, that was my way of getting to that freedom stage later.
And you found that out though once you became, or once you were in corporate and you were seeing others setting up their own business and involved in that, you saw that. Because you could have easily gone and got a job, right? You didn't have to go and start your own business, but at that point you decided to start your own business.
Yeah, that's right. I could have easily gone and said to any real estate office, this is what I want. And it would have probably been a very safe way to do it.
But why would you do safe?
Yeah,
why would you do easy? Why wouldn't you do something that's going to push you to the max? Because so far it looks like your entire life that's what you've done. So you've started your own business, running a Ray White business in Beaumaris. You're still on IVF. Tell me how that's panned out. What happened there?
So as we're on, this is a lovely part of my story of life. I was doing Ray White and we were doing so well. I mean, we soon became one of the top real estate offices. Everyone said, oh, it's a woman. And, it's a very male orientated business. And she's never going to make it. And she's never been here before. Who is she? And we had a lot of ups and downs, and they weren't really great supportive people, that, the agents around, because they were very old school. And that's why I thought I could do something different. Yeah, that's right. We had an agent stealing our boards. We had people talking smack. I mean, it's not all fun. It's not all fun and roses out there in real estate world. When you're hungry for sales and you've got some new person coming in going, wow, bang, splash, and, really aggressively hitting it. I was putting boards out in the morning. I was door knocking the whole suburb. I had teams of people going out collecting data. We were build mode. And we're not taking prisoners. So during that time, Clint and I had decided that we were doing other things. So we rented out our house and we moved into a smaller house because it was all work. And I'd brought Clint on board to the business to work in property management. I think he's never going to forgive me for that. I swear that was a bit of a shock for poor old Clint. But he did so well, and he manages the back end of the business, which enabled me to really work and go out and be the lister and seller and the face of the brand and everything that I needed to be, which was great. And it was fun, it was fun. And it was a lot of work still. And I'm saying that I wanted to have a bit of rest and a bit of time for me. Well, that was nothing. If I thought that I was busy then, well, this was nuts. This was the more kind of busy than I could ever be kind of busy. But also, too, managing people. People management, no one prepares you for that. Honestly, it is the worst part of having a business is people management. The worst and the best, if that makes sense, all in one. So I remember sitting at 2 a.m. We'd gone for a year and a half through all the paperwork of adoption. We decided that adoption was the way we were going. It was the only thing
IVF wasn't working?
Yeah, no, IVF wasn't working. We decided to draw a line in the sand. I remember it was December and I was sitting around the pool in a holiday in Bali, and I said, Clint, I can't do it anymore. My body can't do it. I really don't have anything left. And we didn't have any eggs in reserve or anything. It was the time where I just went, yes, no, this is it for me. Let's look at other possibilities. So then adoption took us a year and a half to do all the paperwork with and do the courses and go sit the exams and to sit in front of a panel of people that evaluated whether we were good enough humans to have our own human. And then we finally did that, and I remember we got approved by the board. We got the tick of approval. Clint and I drove back to work, and we had a champagne at the pub to celebrate. Woo, a year and a half worth of paperwork. It's all done. Let's move on. Let's bring us a baby. But, there was 350 people on the list, and there was 5 adoptions that year. And we knew that the stats, were not high. But we celebrated nonetheless and went back to work. Now, a few days later at 2 a.m., I'm sitting there in the lounge room at night. Again, 2 a.m. I wasn't painting this time. I was Googling surrogacy in the States. So I knew that it would be what's the next thing that I can do to get what I need. So yes, we've done the paperwork. We're going to sit there and wait. What can I do again? It's always doing something to get what we need. So decided that was an option. The very next day, we got a phone call. The phone rang. We were in a sales meeting, and it just rang and rang and rang. And I was a bit like, "There's no phones in the sales meeting, guys. Whose phone is that? Oh, it's ours. Whoops." and then Clint gets the call, and I could hear him go, "Whoa! Oh my God, really? I just can't believe it." And then I'm thinking, and I'm continuing with the sales meeting, listening to all this in the background. And then I said, "What's that?" I had to go out. What's happened? "We've got a baby boy. We've got a boy. They've got a baby for us. He's 8 months old. He's this, and this, and and he's gorgeous, and they've given it to us, and they're giving us 24 hours to decide." And I said, say yes. So during that day, and we came back in, and everyone burst into tears, and Clint was crying, and we were all ecstatic because we had a boy, a little baby boy for us, and it was an Australian adoption. We were so happy. But it was 8 days after being approved from the panel. 8 days later, we've got a son. And then a week later, we brought a baby home.
And I'm emotional now, and I know it because I was there when you got the approval and you rang us, and I never forget you saying, "Oh, if I'm bringing a baby boy home in 8 days, what do I need?" I'm I need to come over. You need quite a bit.
Yes,
absolutely.
Sorted
But
me
I'm
out.
emotional hearing about it again. So, and that's quite rare too. Like 350 people wanting a baby, only 5 babies the year before. And you get that call, you've only just finished all the paperwork after 18 months, and you get the call, you're getting a baby. How did you feel?
I think I was floating. I think I was looking down at what happened and not actually, when you rise above it, you don't feel like it's actually happening to you. I think that sort of was my take on it for a couple of days. And all I could think about, and this is so me, all I could think about was, right, I need to write a list. And so I came back and I'm writing lists. What do babies need? What do I need to do at work? What do I need to finish up? Who do I need to do this deal with? What do I need to do before I can actually leave on Wednesday? So it was the Friday or something. Anyway, we called the next day and they said, yes, we'd definitely take him. They'd given us photos by this stage and all of our family had come over and, we'd celebrated that and we knew it was happening. So we were going to meet him in a week's time. So we had a week. So I remember the spare room was packed full of crap. So we basically cleaned out the spare room, went to Kmart at 1 a.m. in the morning, Burwood. Clint had a trolley, I had a trolley. And while we were both on the phones Googling what an 8-month-old needs, and basically left, there were 2 piled up trolleys of everything we needed. Then there was the next shopping expedition, which involved a couple of my best friends. It was like, what? Okay, now tell me what babies need. I had no idea. Absolutely no idea. So we bought cots and beds and bits and pieces and, made it look as good as we possibly could for him. And then, went and met our little guy.
Which, ironically, most people, and when I say most people, the more traditional route is you do get a little bit more lead up to having a baby than 8 days. You normally have, a period of time where you might start to think about things and think about the room and get involved and what have you. You had none of that. You had 8 days and then you were seeing your baby. How did you feel the moment you laid eyes on him? Like in the flesh, not just a photo, in the flesh.
Yeah, he was lying there in his cot. And the beautiful foster mum, she'd had 13 babies before. So he was baby 14 or something. And she was sending us photos and put a picture of us in his cot. And when we went in there to see him for the first time, he'd pulled the picture off and he had a photo of Clint and I in his hand. And he was lying there with our photo in his hand. And we just melted. We just couldn't believe it. The first time that we held him, his big, beautiful eyes full of knowledge. He was just like this old soul, just full of knowledge, big, beautiful eyes, staring at us. And, He was happy and chilled and giggly, and he was just the most beautiful little guy. And he still is. He's still the most beautiful little guy. So we had a series of a week of getting to know our baby with the foster parent, and going for lunch and doing sleeps and doing bath, and then a day visited our house and then back to there, and then finally we brought him home. And Clint just drove so quietly and so slowly. We're like the old couple on the edge of the freeway with the most beautiful cargo you could imagine in the back, just being very careful. Also too, I just want to say one thing. When I was driving towards the first day that I was meeting Finn, his name's Finn, I was driving towards, and I was in the car, and I wrapped up as much work as I could. And this is a moment where I have vowed that I would never do anything like this again as a parent. I was on the phone to a client, and from the moment we left our house to 3 or 4 minutes before we ended up to the place we were going to pick up Finn. So it was a very lengthy phone call about why I'm good for the business, what I can do for them, why they should choose me, fight for the business, validating my commission, that really grubby, gritty conversation that you hope you never have to have when you're in competition for a a listing. I missed out on holding my husband's hand. I'm so excited, those conversations all the way to go and pick up to meet our son for the first time, while I'm concentrating on total stranger, who I don't even remember who it is now, about, having that conversation instead of enjoying the moment. So I made a vow to myself at that very time that I would never let business do that to me in any part of my family or raising my child.
Wow, that's so powerful. Oh my gosh. And just I have to make a note. So his name was Finn.
Yes.
And what was your dog's name at the time?
Oh, Finn. I
Finn.
know. I say this to
Others
people.
won't know that.
I say this to people, and it's just like, why would you name your son the same as your dog? Well, we didn't actually. His birth mother wanted us to keep Finn's name, so of course we do that as a request. But what I had was a 10-year-old border collie whose name was Finn, and I named him Finn because of the Notebook, the character in the Notebook. And anyway, so I've got a dog whose name is Finn, and then we bring a baby's name home whose name is Finn. So when we were walking the dog and the baby in the pram or doing something, Clint was the worst. He kept forgetting, sit, Finn, not you, baby, I mean Buddy. We had to change the name of the dog to Buddy so that we had some sanity in our home. Otherwise, because they were both named the same. Oh,
You were so meant to have a baby called Finn.
I know. It was my favourite name, and it still is my favourite name, and I ended up with a child with it. It's so
Because normally if you don't have a kid and you have a dog first or an animal first, you normally, if you haven't had a child yet, you use that name. Or if you don't think you're going to be able to have a child, you use that name.
Yeah.
One of my best girlfriends, her parents, they wanted to have a baby and it hadn't happened yet. And so they called their dog by that name. It was actually the name Kim, which is ironically my name. So you've gone and done that only to then be one of the very, very lucky few that ends up adopting a baby who, by the way, has to keep his first name, and his first name's Finn.
Yeah.
This is just miraculous. Oh, Nickers, I could talk to you for donkey's years. So just tell me, so you vowed that you're never going to let that happen again. You're never going to let work take total priority over family. You've now got a little boy who, by the way, is nearly 7, which is super cute. So it's still a reasonably early journey for you. What happened to Ray White and your real estate business?
So when we got Finn, it was not that I couldn't do it. And it wasn't that I could still do my job, I could still run my business and still be a mum. But, one nanny on the weekend turned into 2 nannies, and that only started for the first few months. And I just went, this is not what I want. I'm missing out on having a baby, which we tried every single thing to do. This was the only time I was ever going to do it, and I wanted to be there. So it was actually really interesting and really beautiful the way it worked out. I made the decision in December. The end of December, we had a phone call from one of the other franchise owners who said, look, I'd like to buy your rent roll. We said, yep, sure. So we sold the rent roll, we wound down the business, then Clint got headhunted for a really great role that he took on from there. And by the end of January, it was all done. So basically, it was so meant to be and supported that ended up that way. We still had so here I am, at home with the most beautiful baby in the world and enjoying all of that, thinking everyone said, you'll be bored, you'll be out there doing whatever before you know it. And I've gone, no, I won't. I definitely won't. So I was, but in a different way. So I had the office space, and then after the office space, it was 4 months. We're trying to find a tenant. It was a bit of a tricky, place to find a tenant at that time. So I thought, I've got this space and I'm on this lease. What am I going to do with it? So my creative side kicked in, and we had conversations about this. I opened up a paint and sip studio, paint and pour studios. It was my way to paint, relax, do what I loved, and maybe have some fun at the same time.
For those that don't know what that is, can you just explain it?
Yeah, so and at the time it was a lot before the new ones are open now, and there's a few around. A paint and sip studio is when you go and you get a guided painting session. You can bring your friends, your family, you have your events, your parties, hens nights, whatever, and you come and you bring your wine and your nibbles, and you get guided through a painting session, and you take a painting home with you that you've created. We turn the music up, and it's just a really fun environment. So I decked out the space for that, and it was really great. I'd go and paint in the studio, and before I knew it, it became very big. So what happened was I was doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 2 sessions on a Sunday, and everyone was buying these tickets to come and do these painting sessions. And then I did a Groupon. It was like, wow, all of a sudden, bang, it just grew from there. And I was, having a great time in the studio, coming up with new things to paint, and, doing that. And I needed other painters to come in and do the sessions as well. But before I know it, I get an offer for the rent. So I found a tenant, after doing it for a certain amount of time. I've gone, yep, okay, great. I'm taking the business mobile. So from there, I started the paint and pour studios, which was basically at people's houses or painting in the park or whatever else. Good little side hustle, good business, and I can be in control of my own hours. That was the theory in that one. But as it grew, so did my real estate connections of people saying, Nicole, I really wish you weren't in retirement. I really would love for you to do this deal with me. And I said, well, I can help you, so let's start doing that. So more and more of those came, and I thought, I better get paid for this. So my consultation fees. So then Bayside Real Estate Advocates was born, and I'm a buyer and vendor advocate. And I am really happy about where I'm at and what I can add to clients' experiences. This is, to me, the most worthwhile part or in real estate that I've ever worked in. This, to me, is being there to support people selling and their journey for whatever reason, whether they're selling to a family home or they're downsizing or their left siblings are left doing that for a family, whatever the case may be, and also buying for people as well. So buying investment properties, finding the house of their dreams, helping them downsize into something. It's the whole package from end to end, and it's the most rewarding role in real estate that I've ever had, because I can put my superpower to help people in need, and it feels a lot less cutthroat than vying for paying the overheads and the wages and all that stuff. And soon it became so busy that I had to let go of the paint and pour studios, but we've gone from strength to strength, and that's basically my business.
Wow. And we need to have a podcast number 2, because there's so many things I know that we haven't even covered. But so right now you're a buyer and seller advocate or vendor advocate, and you work directly with real estate agents to help people on their buying and selling journeys. Like, how perfect. Like, could not get a more beautiful role for you, because you combine all your knowledge of decades and decades of success in real estate, the creative, beautiful, warm, homemaking side of you to help people in their buying or selling journey, and you bring all of that to the table. And you're running your own business, so you get to have a little bit more control, that's debatable, of your own hours and raising your beautiful son, Finn. at the same time. And I remember you saying, but I don't really know that I've got a story to share or that people would want to know about. Holy mackerel. Oh my God, Nicole. So what's your next courageous move? What's the next thing for you that you've really got to reach in and find some courage for?
I think the next courageous move for me is really knowing when to look after myself. I think all of my careers have been about doing things for others, and working very hard and, getting paid well to do it, and all the success that I've achieved, I'm so proud of. But now it's about finding the balance. So I know that seems simple to some people, but it's really not simple for me. Finding the courage to work out what I need, to love myself enough to do that and commit to that, to really go, okay, well, I'm worthy enough of that now. I deserve to be the best person that I can be, and for my son, and a great role model in that way, but also too from a health perspective, being at this age, and I'm nearly 50, and the health, and because I think as I mentioned, my early onset for menopause, I now have osteoporosis, so that's a whole new health thing that we need to try and address. So I think the next phase is going to be finding the balance. That's going to be my next courageous move, and putting some boundaries in place. Yeah.
And that is courageous because it's not easy. Like you said, trying to find balance, and, whoever thinks balance exists, but trying to find how you juggle the things that are important to you, prioritize things like your health and self-love and self-care, how you do all of that at the same time as having the ambition and still wanting to run the business and the thrill that gives. Also being a mother, raising a young child, like he's not even 7 yet, so he's still in those years. Plus also having a life as a friend and as a beautiful family member and all of that. It is a juggle, and that does take a lot of courage. So I understand why that's your response to that question. Nick, fruit. If somebody wants to find out about you, I say fruit because it's like, oh my gosh, this is just, I know a lot of your story, but every time I hear, I learn more. And my goodness, you've got to be one of the most courageous humans I have the delight of knowing. If someone does want to get in touch with you, learn more about your advocacy business, or just follow you, where would they go?
So we're Bayside Real Estate Advocates, and you can find us on social media or on Instagram and Facebook, but you can Google my website, and my website tells you the journey between being a vendor and the process we follow with you hand in hand, and also being a buyer, and how we actually do that for you. I know that what I can do in terms of adding value to a client's experience is second to none, and real estate is changing. You don't go trawling the websites anymore and finding the property. Over 40% of my properties that I find for my clients are off market. It's because of the ability to match people with property and really finding out what's important to those people. That's where I think what I add is really rewarding to the client's experience, and feeling supported. Like you say in your podcast, they're feeling supported and heard. And that is what anyone wants in life, and especially when they're dealing with their biggest assets.
Oh, absolutely. One fundamental need of human beings is to feel seen, heard, and understood. Like they belong, like really belong. And from the story we've learned, the teeny tiny hour into your story, that has been a theme throughout your life, like really belonging and feeling like you're part of something. It's no surprise you're doing this work and helping others find that sense of belonging through the properties that they buy, however they buy, or whatever they're doing. So Nicole Payne, thank you. We'll put all the contact details in the show notes as we do. Thank you for sharing such a beautiful, courageous story. And I know there's still bits and pieces in there that we haven't even had time to delve into, but for having the courage to get on and share that in such a real way, thank you. You are a gift to anyone whose life you go into or enter into. Anyone who gets to meet you is so lucky, so blessed.
Wow.
Love you dearly. Thank you.
Love you too. Thank you, Kim. And thank you for being courageous and doing something that was scary and audacious for you, which is this podcast.
Oh, and I love it. All right. Thank you.
Bye.